Hi, so this is part 2 of my tutorial on my configuration library that I wrote. And so for this I'm doing a demo, so keeping with the theme of robots with this class, I wrote a very simple robot simulator, basically just a dot that moves back and forth. And so feel free to follow along with the code I provide with this. So basically if I run it, that's basically just what it does. It bounces back and forth, and the speed doubles whenever it hits the end or scales by a factor. So if I go and look at the code for this, so basically this is a very simple class analogous to like the simulation class with the robot simulator you may have been working on. And so basically, so this is examples of the different macro calls. So with this I'm saying get string of board of board. So board is a string in the configuration file, and same with get int, get bool, get float. I've got a bunch of different calls with it. And so if I go and open up the file, so I have this in a separate folder. I've actually got two of them. I'll just open both of them right now. So I have, this is an example of a file. So I've got comments, as an example here. I've got a string, this is including another file. I've got a character is what this is, and boolean. You can write bool or you can write boolean, and for both work for booleans. And then I've also got an int here. Well, I couldn't think of a good example of using hexadecimal with a demo that's this simple, so well, I just wrote the milliseconds between the frames that I'm displaying. I wrote that as a hexadecimal number, which doesn't really make sense in this context, but this is just to illustrate what the syntax is. I found it useful if you want to use it for something real, like for colors. That is a good way of using it. And then in this other include file, which packages the settings that are specific to the robot itself, for example, I have settings with like the initial position, initial speed, max speed, acceleration, whatever. So basically the idea is I have two different files. So you can see, so this controls what the robot did. So if I compile it here, or recompile, configuration.cpp is kind of a big file. It takes a bit to compile. So if I go ahead and run it, you can see that it starts out near the left end of the board, the string that's the board. And so if I decide to go and change this to, well, how long is this? I'll put it towards the end. So you can see I just changed a variable in the file and saved it. So if I run it again, well, you can see that it started off more over here. So it started a ways over because I read that in from the file. And so you can also set values from the command line. So this is a very simple main.cpp. So basically what I'm doing is just creating or initializing the configuration with configuration : init config, and I pass in the argc and argv. And then the one thing I do have problem to find is the name or the path to the configuration file, and the path is actually from the executable itself. So yeah, so it's // config because I have my configuration files in a separate subfolder along with bin and source. Yeah, so then I pass in the file name too, in addition to the command line arguments, like all that. And I'm just creating a new app, and then starting the loop. So basically, that lets me, if I want to change something from the command line, like what would I want to change here? Like, okay, so initial speed, I'll try changing that to something really big, like 10. So it's, as I said before, -d, initial speed. You can see it goes much faster, so it's using that value which I typed in for the speed. And if, for example, you have the wrong type of a variable, for example, it'll also report that. So say I set that to true, for example, well, that'll actually give a syntax error because it expected an int, and in the file I said it was an int, but I gave it something which doesn't look like an int. But if I say over here, if I set it to, so it actually parses it correctly as a boolean, it'll, when it goes and tries to find that in the file or in the program, it'll say it looked for, or when it initializes the speed, it looks for initial speed as an int, but I set it as a bool in the file. So if I change that back, same thing happens if I define it from the command line. Yeah, so you get the same error message with that. Yeah, so then also if I have a variable that's missing, it also gives an error for that. And yeah, so it says it could not find the variable initial speed. I don't currently have it working. Eventually I want to have it so it'll report the line number in this file where it was used, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. So for now you can just easily search through here for wherever that showed up. grep comes in handy for that. And also if I were to define this twice, like let's say I copy it over to here and put 10 in for it. So it, it's the same as if it's in two different files or in the same file. It doesn't actually crash with an error, it just gives a warning that it says that it was already bound, and it says, well, it still uses the original values. You can see it went much faster. And so yeah, so this is all very straightforward, and feel free to try and go and do this yourself and try making a few changes. Oh, I guess one other thing which I almost forgot is you can also tell it to use different files. So if I look in here, I have got 3 config files, default, robot, and then I also declared a different one. So if I just, oops. So if I look at that, I changed, what did I change? Yeah, I changed initial speed to 10 in here, so same as what I was doing. And then, so if I run it and say dash and config and do that, well, you can see it overwrote it, and when you say add config, it will just overwrite any variables that already existed in the other configuration file. On the other hand, if I say use config, well, it'll only load that file as the main file and ignore, it'll completely ignore the default file. So if I were to do that, it'll give me an error because, well, it couldn't find the stuff that was in the default file. Yeah. So yeah, so I think that's all I have for the demo. So then I guess in the next video I will show how to actually set up the library if you want to use it with your own project.